Philadelphia, 1943. The docks were alive with the noise of war. Steel clashed against steel, sailors shouted orders across the water, and destroyers loomed like restless beasts waiting to be unleashed on the Atlantic. Among them was the USS Eldridge, a destroyer escort that looked no different from any other. But appearances, as history or conspiracy would have it, can be deceiving, because this ship was about to become the centerpiece of one of the strangest and most terrifying legends in military history. A story whispered for decades, denied at every turn, and yet still alive today. The Philadelphia Experiment. The legend begins with what should have been a test, not of weapons or armor, but of invisibility itself. Rumor has it the Navy wanted a way to make ships vanish, not with smoke or camouflage paint, but literally disappear from view and from radar. A war-winning trick, the kind of technology that could make a convoy escort unstoppable, an Atlantic fleet untouchable. And so the Eldridge was fitted with massive electromagnetic coils, strange machinery bolted to its decks, and wiring that no ordinary sailor could understand. The crew knew something unusual was happening, but few of them grasped the scale of what they were about to witness. On the day of the test, the air was heavy with tension. Observers lined the harbor, officers whispered among themselves, and the sailors waited nervously below deck. Then, with a signal, the power was activated. The coils hummed, the air shimmered, and an eerie green fog began to surround the ship. Witnesses described the Eldridge as blurring at the edges, as though its outline was being erased. And then, in a flash, it was gone. A destroyer weighing more than 1,000 tons vanished from sight. For a few terrifying moments, there was nothing but the sound of churning water where the ship had been. And then, just as suddenly, the Eldridge reappeared, slamming back into view. To the casual observer, it may have looked like a stunning success, but to the men on board, it was a descent into hell. Survivors later described chaos beyond comprehension. Some sailors stumbled across the deck vomiting, their eyes wide with terror. Others screamed in pain as they discovered their arms or legs fused into the steel bulkheads, their flesh merged with the ship itself. Men convulsed, their bodies broken by forces no one could explain. Some vanished entirely, never seen again, while others claimed to fade in and out of sight for days afterward, as though they were trapped halfway between this world and another. The ship had returned, but the crew was shattered. The Navy, of course, denied it all. Their official story was simple. The Philadelphia experiment never happened. The Eldridge, they said, had never even been in Philadelphia at the time. Records placed it elsewhere, engaged in routine duties, nothing unusual, but official records can be altered, and witnesses insisted they had seen the impossible with their own eyes. The denials did little to kill the story. If anything, they gave it new life. The tale might have faded into obscurity if not for a man named Carl Allen, also known as Carlos Allende. In the 1950s, Allen wrote a series of bizarre letters to a researcher named Morris Jessup, who had published a book on UFOs. Allen claimed he had seen the Philadelphia experiment firsthand, describing the ship vanishing, the green fog, and the horror of the crew when it returned. His letters were rambling, filled with strange tangents and contradictions, the kind of thing most people would dismiss. But Jessup noticed something odd. Allen's descriptions included references to scientific theories that weren't widely known at the time, concepts about electromagnetism and space-time that seemed far beyond the understanding of a drifter. How did he know so much? Allen claimed the Navy had used Albert Einstein's unfinished unified field theory as the basis for the experiment. This was Einstein's holy grail, a way to merge gravity and electromagnetism into a single framework. If it were true, it could unlock teleportation, invisibility, even time travel. Allen insisted the Navy had cracked it, at least partially, and that the Eldridge was the proof. Instead of bending light around the ship, however, the experiment had warped reality itself. The idea wasn't entirely out of step with the time. In the 1940s, the US military was exploring every scientific frontier, desperate to win the war. Radar, sonar, nuclear weapons, all of it came from wartime innovation. The idea of experimenting with electromagnetic fields to cloak ships from radar doesn't sound impossible in that context. What sounds impossible are the results: teleportation, time slips, and men fused into steel. And yet, that's exactly what the legend claims. Allen's letters also hinted at something darker, that the Eldridge hadn't just disappeared from Philadelphia. It had reappeared in Norfolk, Virginia, over 200 miles away, before vanishing again and returning to its original spot. If true, it wasn't just invisibility, it was teleportation on a scale humanity had never seen. Some sailors supposedly swore they saw men vanish in 1943, only to reappear years later, confused and ranting about things that hadn't happened yet. If these stories hold any truth, then the Navy hadn't just broken the laws of physics, they had torn holes in time itself. And then, as if the story needed more weight, whispers began to tie it to Nikola Tesla. Tesla, the eccentric genius, had died in January 1943, just months before the experiment allegedly took place. After his death, the FBI seized his papers, many of which remain classified. Tesla had worked with high-voltage electricity, electromagnetic fields, and concepts of wireless energy transmission that seemed almost magical to his contemporaries. Some theorists believe his research provided the foundation for the Philadelphia experiment, passed into military hands after his death. If true, the Eldridge was not just a Navy test gone wrong. It was Tesla's ghost project carried out on an unimaginable scale. The legend only grew in the decades that followed. Witnesses came forward claiming to have seen the green fog envelop the Eldridge. Families whispered about loved ones who returned from the Navy distant and haunted, refusing to talk about what had happened. Bars filled with rumors of sailors who vanished into thin air during fights, reappearing minutes later, their bodies unstable, their minds broken. Each story was more disturbing than the last, and together they painted a picture of men who had been scarred not just physically, but spiritually. Men who had glimpsed something no human was meant to see. By the 1980s, the Philadelphia experiment had left the shadows of conspiracy and entered the spotlight of pop culture. A Hollywood film dramatized the story, turning it into a cult legend. Books, documentaries, and late-night radio shows picked it apart from every angle. The Navy was bombarded with questions they wanted nothing to do with. Each denial, each insistence that nothing had happened, only seemed to fuel the belief that they were hiding something monumental. After all, governments don't waste time denying fairy tales. They deny the things they want buried. And that's where the Philadelphia experiment becomes more than just a ghost story. Because if the experiment was real, and if it succeeded even partially, then where did that technology go? Was it abandoned, locked away in some forgotten archive because it was too dangerous? Or was it refined, perfected, and hidden in black-budget projects that continue to this day? If you had the power to cloak ships, teleport them across oceans, or tear through time itself, would you admit it to the world? Or would you erase every trace of it and keep it as the ultimate military secret? That's the terror of the Philadelphia experiment. Not that it failed, but that it worked. That the horror stories of men fused into steel, of sailors vanishing into nothing, were just the side effects of an early test. That somewhere, deep in the classified world of military science, the real technology still exists. Maybe it's being tested in hidden facilities. Maybe it's already in use. Maybe the greatest invisibility trick isn't making a ship vanish. It's making the truth disappear. And so the legend lives on. A ship that vanished in a green fog. A crew torn apart by forces beyond human comprehension. A government that denies everything, and a story that refuses to die. Whether it's truth, myth, or something in between, the Philadelphia experiment continues to haunt us because it touches our deepest fears. The fear that there are doors humanity was never meant to open. The fear that someone opened them anyway. And the fear that somewhere in the shadows, those doors are still wide open. So did the Philadelphia experiment really happen? Or is it the darkest sailor's tale ever told? The Navy will say no. Skeptics will laugh. But the legend remains. because some stories are too powerful to vanish. If you want more hidden tech, lost inventions, and conspiracies that refuse to die, hit that like button and subscribe to Off the Map. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what's still hiding in the shadows.